I think he recognizes that sometimes he's just caught up in that cycle of outrage. That cycle of outrage, there's no room there's no room to step back and to sort of reset. It's just constant outrage, constantly under attack, and then there's these words that get thrown around that sort of lose their meaning, like globalists, and shills, and this sort of like attitude that there's this cabal of evil that is trying to take over the world. And at one point,
they're talking about Alex Jones right now. This is actually from a podcast with Jimmy Dore and Joe Rogan, 2018.
Alex had this idea that they were going to try to kill off most people. Yeah. And you remember that?
I heard about it.
There was this idea that they wanted to euthanize, it was genocide. They wanted to break it down to, what is the word where they talk about doing that?
I think they're talking about eugenics, but I also think they're talking about those stones in the mountain there, what are they called? The guide stones. I think he's talking about the guide stones.
To talk about reducing the population. There's like some sort of a conspiracy theorist term of reduction of population to a sustainable number of super evil geniuses that could live forever. And they wanted to get it down to 500 million people worldwide that can live for 1 million years or some crazy shit.
What a difference 5 years make. Now, everybody, I don't adhere to the philosophy the theory that whatever's going on is deliberate population control, but it's certainly much less preposterous or outlandish than it might have been 5 years ago. And at the end of the day, like I say, whether or not it's deliberate genocidal population control disguised as whatever versus just absolutely idiotic policy that is going to have something of a lasting impact on global population for a generation. The only difference there, ladies and gentlemen, is one of intent, not one of outcome. Because I made the joke a little while ago. If the theory were that you wanted to reduce global population, you wanted to decimate a generation, render people potentially, issues with reproductivity, and you wanted to do it in a way that you'd not get caught, what would you be doing differently? So I was watching these podcasts. It's amazing. You go back 5 years, the world was different. What was outlandish then, not so outlandish now, even if you don't agree with it. And I've watched hours and hours of Jimmy Dore over the last days, and it's fantastic. I know him better than I think he knows that I know him. Now, Jimmy Dore is in the back right now, so I'm not gonna go on longer than I have to with the intro. For a second, I was a little nervous. He wasn't going to come, but he came. He's here. Standard disclaimers, the whole thing. No legal advice, medical advice, and election fortification advice. I've starred a few super chats. I'm going to look at the Rumble rants. We're going to try to get to some questions. We're going to go exclusive to Rumble. I don't know, 15 minutes in after we delve into Jimmy's childhood, because it's interesting. And that's it. So without further ado, I see Jimmy in the background. Jimmy, get ready. Coming in. 3, 2, 1. Coming in hot. Jimmy, sir.
Okay. How you doing? Good to be here.
It is so bizarre to me. I've been watching you for the last 3 days. You don't know it. I've been cyber stalking, and I'm joking, but I've been watching, interviews going back, and I've been listening to you for a while, and it's fantastic to finally meet you.
Likewise, I appreciate it. I wonder. I'm curious to see what you found over the last 3 days watching me.
I got there's a number of things. The podcasts with Joe Rogan, Wikipedia, stuff on the Young Turks. Oh, we're going to get into it. We're going to get into the bottom line. You have Jimmy Dirtbag Left Dore on your screen. I don't know what separates left and right anymore. And we're going to get into this in a bit, because I don't think there's much that you say that I disagree with. I don't think there's much that this side of the aisle says that you disagree with, save and except for certain policies, universal healthcare. We'll get there. But Jimmy, okay, for those who don't know who you are, 30,000-foot overview before I go further into your childhood than I think you might want me to. Who are you, for those who may not know?
So I've been a stand-up comedian, had a couple of Comedy Central specials, did a lot of late night television, had a public radio television show, had a special called Citizen Jimmy in 2008 that was chosen Best of the Year. That led to me getting a national radio show, which then led me to be on the Young Turks, which then led me to start my own show. And so now I've become who I am, which is a populist lefty who won't participate in the two-party corporate duopoly. And I'm not going to pretend that voting for Joe Biden is going to make one bit of a difference. In fact, I make the argument that Thomas Frank made in his book, Listen Liberal, that oftentimes a Democrat is the greater evil. And so, you know, who else made that at the Black Agenda Report? Glenn Ford said that Obama was the greater evil. So was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton did stuff that hurt the workers and unions that George Bush I could never do, like NAFTA. George Bush I tried to pass NAFTA. He couldn't do it because the Blue Dog Democrats wouldn't cross the unions. Well, then Bill Clinton became president, and he gave cover to those Blue Dog Democrats to cut the legs out underneath unions for a generation, which they did. So that's the 30,000 view. That's where I come from. I still do stand-up comedy. I have a new special coming out very soon, and I think it's going to be called "COVID Lies Are Funny." And lately, so what got me on the outs with the Democratic Party and people who used to be my friends in Hollywood was that after the Democrats cheated Bernie in 2016, which is not a conspiracy theory, it was admitted to by everybody, including Elizabeth Warren and Donna Brazile. She found the contract that Hillary Clinton had with the DNC, saying that she would be controlling the DNC during the primary, which is unethical and illegal and all that stuff. So anyway, and Bernie Sanders didn't make them pay a price for that at all. They screwed Bernie over, and he allowed them to still have super delegates, take all the corporate money they want and all that stuff, and nothing ever changed. And so then they did it again. And so I've been done with the Democrats, and I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton because I said that things just get worse every 4 years. They're always going to find a monster that's worse than them, or they can prop them up. And it turns out, you know, Trump didn't govern any really different than any of the uniparty because Barack Obama was not a departure from George Bush. He took us from 2 wars to 7. He kicked 5.1 million families out of their homes, and while he made sure the bankers got their bonuses. He deported twice as many Hispanics as Donald Trump. He built the cages they put those immigrant kids in. He dropped more bombs than George W. Bush. He gave us a right-wing healthcare plan, which is a giveaway to health insurance and big pharma instead of what he promised, which was a public option and Medicare for all. He didn't codify Roe versus Wade, which is what he said he would do on day one. He would give abortion rights to women. He didn't do it. He said, that's not that important to me. Why? Because they have nothing else to run on, because fundamentally the Democrats and Republicans are the same. Barack Obama even said so in an interview with Venezuelan television in 2012. He said, if you look at my policies, they would be considered moderate Republican if this was 1984. And so that there is no left in America. And that's what people don't realize. They think AOC and Bernie, they're left. No, what they're there to do is to make sure they funnel the progressive revolutionary energy back into a pro-Wall Street, anti-worker, pro-war party. And that's exactly what they've been doing. And they've been voting along with war. They're war pigs. Bernie Sanders is a big war pig. I don't think you can be a lefty and vote to send $100 billion to a bunch of Nazis in Ukraine fighting a proxy war over liquefied natural gas. And this is an economic fight. We all knew it. In fact, Angela Merkel just admitted that the only reason that they did the Minsk agreement, which was in 2015, that was the peace agreement between the Russian-speaking in the eastern part of Ukraine and the Ukraine government. The reason why they did that was to buy time so Ukraine could build up their military. So when they did provoke Russia to invade Ukraine, they would have a military to fight back. So we're using the Ukrainians as cannon fodder. And people in America have been so propagandized. They look at people in Ukraine who are literal Nazis, and they're told that they're freedom fighters, and they don't know anything better because they've been so propagandized. But what's even worse is they don't know that they don't know anything.
Jimmy, I mean, they just need to go back and see videos from 2016 about the Nazi problem in the Ukraine. Okay, but hold on. That was a mouthful, which I'm undoubtedly going to clip because it's fantastic. And we're going to get into all of that. Before we even get there now, Jimmy Dore, you're how old are you, if I may ask?
I turned 40 17 years ago.
So you're 57 years old. That's a young old man or an old young man. From Wikipedia, it says you're 7th of 11 kids.
No, I was no, that's not correct. I had 12 siblings, and I was number 11. I have one younger sister who was adopted.
Okay.
So I was the last natural born child of my mother. We were born Irish Catholic. It's a long story, but we had 10 kids, and then my mom adopted 2 more. One, a boy older than me, and a girl younger than me.
Okay, I had no idea. May I ask what would possess anybody to adopt 2 additional children after having had 10?
I don't know. My theory was that my mother didn't know what to do with herself if she wasn't taking care of a baby. She wanted a baby, right? And she did, like, I think she felt like she missed having a baby, because when she had babies, she had to take care of all these other kids. So she wanted, and so she went to Catholic Charities, which has foster kids, and she asked for a baby. And they said, "We don't have a baby, but we have this 3rd grade kid. Would you want to take this 3rd grade kid?" And she took him. And I said, why did you do that? And she said, because I wanted to get in good with them, so then they'll give me a baby. And I thought that was crazy. And sure enough, like, I don't know, 8 months later, they gave her a baby. And so then I got to have a little sister, which was great. I appreciated having a little sister. So that's the only thing I can think of why she would do it.
And I won't get too far into this, but what's it like? 10 kids, I presume by the time you're the young kid, the older ones have already moved out of the house, so there's not 10 people living under one roof.
Right.
What's it like for a 3rd grade kid to come into somebody else's house and be the new kid, but be someone else's kid?
Boy, I don't know. You have to ask my brother Eddie. I don't know. He adapted. I can't tell you that.
Okay, now one story. I was listening to Joe, and the story, which you make it funny, but it's not funny at all. First of all, I always thought, I didn't know you came from an Irish Catholic family, and then when I read that, I got to the part of the Joe Rogan podcast where you're describing water skiing with a priest, and making jokes about having been groped or touched inappropriately by an adult. And if you can tell the story, I don't want to steal the thunder, but you come from a religious family, and the problems with the church are the problems that we know of, and you experience them not as thoroughly as others, but you had your own brush with being fondled by religious people.
So there was this priest, Father Hallahan, and it was at Our Lady of the Snows Parish on the southwest side of Chicago. And when I got into 8th grade, he became our new pastor. So he was from another church, and he came, and he was the new boss. And he had a house on a lake up in about 40 minutes north of Chicago on a lake, and he had a house with a boat. And so he would take like 5 boys on the weekend, on a Saturday, drive us up there. And then he was under the guys over going to go out on his boat. He's going to teach us how to ski and stuff. And so he had the day, it was so funny. So he had the day rigged. He had it set up that you would have to do some work, and then you could do play. Like you had to do some yard work, or you had to clean something, and then you could go do play, and then you had to do some more work, and then you could do more play. And the reason why he had it set up like that was because each time he had changed the activity, you had to change your clothes. And so everybody had to go into a room, and we would all change our clothes together at the same time. And then he would find a reason to come in the room. And then he would always start wrestling with someone. And he's not that kind of a guy. He was like a real soy boy toy. I don't know if that's the term, whatever that means. He's not that kind of a guy. And we knew what he was doing, and we knew who he was. The boys did. Like we knew we used to call him Happy Hands Hallahan, right? And we knew he was a toucher, as they say, right? So this guy was a molester. And but we wanted to go on his boat. And so we knew it was your duty to stay away from him. Like we know he's a pedophile, and so it's up to you to stay away from him. You don't let him touch you. But he got a couple of them. I remember he got this guy, Danny Dominic. And I remember I broke his gumball machine trying to get away from him. But he would try to teach you how to ski. I don't know if you've ever learned how to water ski. The way they teach you how to water ski is they just like riding a bike. They put you in fucking water skis, and then they pull it, and you try to get up. That's how. And so he was going to teach you how to. So he took you in the shallow water, and then he would put his hands cups underneath your balls from front and back, and then he would go, okay, when the boat takes away, you're gonna get pulled up, and then you got to go. And we all saw what he was doing. Like I didn't let him do that to me. He started doing it with Danny Dominic, and then he's like, do that. And we're watching, and Danny looks at it, he goes, help me. And we all just started laughing because that's how kids react. That's how an 8th grade kid reacts to somebody getting molested right in front of them. They start laughing. It was funny. And it was funny to us at the time.
So
and then I faked a stomach ache. I remember I had I don't know if I faked it. I think I actually did get a stomach ache. It's hard to remember. It was a long time ago, but I remember I didn't get fully molested. He tried several times, but I didn't get fully molested.
People are saying in the chat, my dad would have shot him. This is an interesting. It could be funny at the time and maybe even humorous in retrospect. But at some point in your life, does this not become a traumatizing event? And did everybody around you, your parents, did they know what was going on at the time, or is it like a?
So no, we got in trouble for talking about it. Like if we called him Happy Hands Holohan. We call him Happy Hands because he would always grab you when he would see you. And like our parents didn't go, well, I wonder why they call him Happy Hands Holohan. They just go, don't call him that. That's disrespectful. I mean, that's the way it was back then. That's why the Catholic Church was able to get away with that for so long. And but that didn't scar me. What scarred me was when I made if you're a Catholic, you make they call it confirmation.
Yeah.
And if you're Jewish, I think it's like kind of like their bar mitzvah. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with.
It's a reaffirmation of the baptism that occurred when you were a baby type thing.
Yeah. So what you get baptized when you're a baby, which means it's supposed to mean that if you die, you won't go to hell. You've now been cleansed of your original sin or whatever. But then you got to fucking do that again with this confirmation thing. The confirmation thing I was told is when you accept the Holy Spirit into your heart. So it's kind of hocus pocusy. And so the bishop comes to the church, right? And that's a big deal. The bishop's going to come to your church. And in Chicago, the bishop's a big, especially when I was a kid in the 70s, I knew who the bishop was because he was on TV all the time. It was before the internet. So there's only 3 TV stations, and the bishop was always, it was the Cardinal Cody. He was always on the TV. And so, the Cardinal's coming. He's going to come. Like, I was excited. And my dad, he's a guy who was what they call him lectors. He's a reader at church. So he's a lay person. He wasn't, but one of the readings from the Bible he would read every week, right? So for my confirmation, he was the reader guy. So he said, hey, come before the thing, come backstage and you can meet the Cardinal, right? And so I was like, all right. So we go back there, and I was an altar boy, so I was familiar with being backstage. And the door opens, and I'm so excited. I'm going to meet the Cardinal, and it's another guy. It wasn't the Cardinal at all. It was just some jamoke I had never seen before. And my dad immediately kneels down and takes his hand and kisses the ring. And I was just like, I liked it. I go, what in the fuck is going on? That's just a guy. And so I was just, and my dad was like, do you want to? And I'm like, no, I couldn't even give a shit. And I certainly didn't fucking kneel down in front of him like my dad did. It really, really bothered me. And so afterwards I asked my dad, why did you do that? Why did you kneel down and kiss that guy's ring? And he said, well, he's the bishop. I go, that's not the bishop. And he said, oh, well, the bishop's really busy, Jimmy. He can't be everywhere. It's like Santa Claus. So he has helpers. So I was like, oh, the bishop has a helper. So he's like the bishop, but he's not the bishop. And my dad said, yeah, like that. He has all the powers of the bishop. And I go, so why did you kneel down in front of him and kiss his ring? And he said, I wasn't kissing his ring. I was kissing there's a holy jewel, and that's special and sacred. And I was kissing that. And I go, oh, really? He just happens to wear it on his ring finger, on a ring that you kissed. And that scarred me. Like,
how old were you? How old were you?
So however old you are in 7th grade, I was in 7th grade.
13, 14.
Like that, 12 or 13. And that scarred me. So that's in Jungian terms, that helped build my father complex. And
well, is what scarred you about it seeing your father be subservient to another human?
Yes. To betray. Like I was taught in Catholic school that there's Pharisees, and they're just men, and they're the ones who wanted people to bow down to them, and they're the ones who persecuted Jesus. They were the religious people, the Pharisees, and then here comes these fucking guys dressed just like the Pharisees in my religious textbooks that are, they're drawn to look like, they're still dressing like that from 2,000 fucking years ago. And my dad kneels down in front of him, and I don't even know who this guy is, and it's just a person, and I just knew it instinctively. So maybe in a good way, the silver lining was it just solidified, like, this is bullshit to me, that this is about hierarchy and dogma, and this isn't about spirituality, and it isn't. The Catholic, I think most denominations, whether it be, I still go to church. I go to church though, because my mother-in-law likes to go to church, so I go with her. And so we go to all different kinds of churches, and I haven't been to a church yet that gets the meaning of the Bible. So they all get, it's all very surface level. They have no idea what it's actually about. They have no idea about how to go inward. God is always external. God is not external. God is inward. As Carl Jung says, those who look outward dream, those who look inward awake.
Okay, now I don't think we're not gonna spend the whole time on your childhood, but other than the occasional molestation from a high priest and your dad being subservient to the very same institution that was doing this at the same time, normal childhood. How do you go from that into stand-up comedy?
So I don't know what a normal, people would always say, hey, what's it like growing up in a big family? And I didn't know what to say because I don't have anything. You don't know what you are until you go experience something else that you could compare it to. So they say, like, you don't know your hometown until you leave it. So I didn't really know what it was like growing up in my family until I wasn't. And it was, fucking chaotic all the time with no boundaries whatsoever. That was the big thing. You didn't have any boundary. You got all those people living in one house. So you don't have those kind of boundaries. So you had to learn. And so I was constantly crossing other people's boundaries in life when I went into the world, and when I went away to college and stuff like that. And I had to realize, that was a big thing for me to figure out where my boundaries were and where other people's were. So that was the one thing I had to. But I became a stand-up comedian because when I got out of college, I got a degree in marketing communications. And I was supposed to go into advertising. And I was going to write advertising copy. And I just started doing stand-up comedy that summer instead. I went up at an open mic because I'd seen people on television that I was fucking sure I was funnier than. And I'm like, well, if they could be on TV, I bet I could do it in a club. And I was right. And so I immediately started getting work right away. They started paying me like couple months after I started doing open mics. I started getting paid, and I was like, well, are you fucking kidding me? I was getting paid as much to do that as I was to do brickwork. And I was just like, this is amazing. And sometimes I would go from the first time I went out of town to do comedy in Milwaukee, I had so much fun. I forgot to get paid.
It's fantastic. And anybody who has never experienced the expression, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, won't appreciate that. But and what was the nature early on? What's the nature of the comedy? Observational? Was it political or was it apolitical?
No, it was, I just talked about whatever. I just tried to get a laugh. When you first start, it's just trying to figure out how do I get a laugh on stage? It's such a different thing than getting a laugh in real life or off stage. And I started to talk about my family a little bit more. But then after the Iraq War, so about 10, 11 years in, the Iraq War happened, and that kind of changed everything for me.
Iraq War number 1 or Iraq War number 2?
Number 2.
And now, to be a good stand-up comic, you have to be able to read people, read a room. Do you acquire that skill, or was it a skill that you knew that you had already and you honed it through stand-up?
I think when I quote unquote read a room, it's like I can sense the mood of the crowd. What I'm going to need to make this joke go over. Am I going to be able to present this joke? How do I present this? How do I create the conditions in this room that will help my joke succeed? And that's what I do. So sometimes it's, you got to be quieter and softer when the crowd's a little rowdy. You be quieter when the crowd's a little quiet. You be a little more rowdy. It's a dance, right? And so it's different every time and every night and every time you get up, it's different. It is like dancing, and some people are good at dancing and they have a rhythm. Jerry Seinfeld said that good stand-up comedians could have been. He said, I think most good stand-up comedians could have been a drummer. And I know Bill Burr's a big drummer, actually really good. So I agree with that. It's about rhythm, and I've always had rhythm, and I could always dance and stuff like that. So that's what I think when I hear Read the Room. It's just about sensing their energy and knowing how to flow with it. To not to change who you are, but to create the conditions that will give your jokes the best opportunity to succeed.
All right, now I think we're going to end this on YouTube. We're going to stay here. I'm going to click one button because we're going to go over exclusively to Rumble. I didn't put the link. That's the one thing everybody in the chat, I asked if I had forgotten something to do, and it was to put the link to Rumble because we're going there now. I flagged some of the comments because there's some questions, some super chats, and they're good because we're going to get into all of this. So ending on YouTube now, come on over to Rumble where we're going to carry this on because now we're going to get into the politics of this. I don't know where you acquired the wealth of information you did, but the marriage between politics and comedy is what makes you fascinating. So everybody, go to Rumble. We're ending on YouTube in 3, 2,